everyone, Mrs. Hutchins here again. So glad that you're joining me. So today we're going to be talking about comparing fractions. Let's start out with some basic vocabulary first. When we have a fraction, we have what we call a numerator and a denominator. This thick line in between that separates these two numbers is called a fraction bar. So the numerator is going to be the number of shaded or covered pieces. This is the number that goes on top. The denominator, when you think denominator, think down. This is the number that's going to be on the bottom of the fraction bar. Denominator is the total number of equal sized pieces. So now that we have some vocabulary, let's move down to what do we do when we see two fractions we're comparing and they have the same numerator. Remember, numerator means the same top number. So let's look at these two. I've got two fraction bars. They're the same size units, so I know there's one of each. I know there's 2/8 and 2/16. Notice both of these have the same numerator of 2. They have different denominators. So this means they have a different number for the total number of equal sized pieces. This one has 16 pieces, this one has 8 pieces. So when I go to compare, I know, looking at my picture, 2/8 has more space covered than 2/16. So when I compare, I would draw my 2 dots near the bigger fraction. I would then put 1 dot near the smaller fraction, and I would draw my alligator eating 2/8 rather than 2/16. Here's how we explain how you know. So we always start with I know. I know 2/8 is greater than 2/16. Because the bigger the denominator, the smaller the pieces. Notice 16 is a bigger denominator than 8, so it has smaller sized pieces than 8ths. So 2/8 has more shaded than 2/16. All right, let's move on to same denominator. Denominator, think down, right? This is going to be the same bottom number. Both of these have 6 equal sized pieces. Now, when I shaded 2/6, it looked like this. When I shaded 4/6, it looked like this. So when I go to compare, I know, just looking at this picture, 2/6 definitely has less than 4/6. So when I compare right here, I put the 2 dots next to the bigger number. I know 4/6 is bigger than 2/6. And then I would draw my alligator. When I read this, it says 2/6 is less than 4/6. So here's how I'd explain. I know 2/6 is less than 4/6 because 2 of the same size pieces is less than 4 of the same size pieces. 2 is less than 4. So 2/6 has less shaded than 4/6. All right. I'm going to show you a few strategies where you can be successful today when you're comparing fractions. There are a few things that you can do. We've got 3 different strategies. The first one we could always use is use our scratch paper to draw a number line. Maybe you draw 2 number lines. You're going to split one into 4 equal sized pieces and one into 2 equal sized pieces. You would then make your fraction bars appropriately. Let's pretend it's asking you to compare 2/4 and 2/2. When I compare these two, I notice 2/4 is right here. I notice 2/2 is over here. Oh, so when I compare them, if 2/2 is over here and 2/4 is over here, I know 2/2 is bigger than 2/4 because it covers more space on the number line. So I would put my 2 dots next to the bigger number. I notice 2/2 is greater than 2/4 because 2/4 is covering less space on the number line. Why would Mrs. Hutchins circle these 2 numbers, these 2 numbers, and these 2 numbers? Think first. Why did I circle those? Yes, you are correct. I circled them because these are called equivalent fractions. 2/4 is equal to 1/2. 4/4 is equal to 2/2. They're both equal to 1. 0/4 and 0/2 are both equal to 0. All right, the second way I could compare fractions is drawing a picture. Now, if you choose to draw a rectangle or a circle, make sure you think of something that's easy to draw, easy for you to figure out. You have to make sure that these line up correctly because you don't want to compare two different sized units. You want to make sure they're the same size unit. So I have 1/4 is equal to 2/8. Oh, because they cover the same amount of space. They have the same amount of space shaded. The third one, I actually would like you to challenge yourself today and use the third strategy before you even start number 1 strategy or number 2 strategy. Here's why. You can use what we call reasoning. So before you compare using a number line or picture, I want you to think, what do you already know about these two fractions? So before I use any of my strategies mentioned above, I'm going to look at 3/6 and I'm going to look at 4/6. And I'm going to think for a second, what do I know about these fractions? Well, I know 3/6 is equal to half. 4/6 has to be more than half if 3/6 is equal to half. I also notice they have the same denominator, so they have the same number of equal sized pieces. So 4 shaded is bigger than the 3 shaded. So 4/6 would be my greater fraction. I would put 2 dots by my bigger fraction, 1 dot by my smaller fraction, and I would compare these using reasoning. I thought about what do I know about these fractions before I drew a number line or a picture. So go ahead and try those strategies today.